Yes, and everybody got mad with me for saying that. You know, I didn't mind telling the world that I was gay. I was gay. And it's nice to be happy.
Music were gay men, and they were being thrown away as a young kid. And I was determined that I was not going to sit silent.
In the mid-'80s, you were considered the bisexual artist.
Yes, considered the bisexual
let me
artist.
start over.
No, that's okay. It's fine.
For decades, being LGBT in the entertainment industry has been a roadblock, but being LGBT for black people has been a lifelong sentence. There's a transgender singer who pretended to be a man for 4 decades just to get on stage. There's a music legend who fell into depression after a single article revealed his sexuality. A few weeks later, his body was found in his hotel room. The media called it a stroke. His family called it a fall from grace. But that's not all, because today, for the first time, you'll get to know 21 older black R&B singers who were LGBT, people who once burned out on music but were never allowed to be themselves. Watch the video until the end, and if any of the stories make you speechless, leave a comment, because your sympathy now could save their memories from being buried forever. 21. Little Richard, the king of pretend. He is called the father of rock and roll, but he is also the first person to wear high heels to step onto the black music stage. Little Richard, a radiant face, eccentric style, a voice that burned the whole audience. People call him a symbol of liberation, but few know that he was a borrower of his own life all his life. He grew up in an extremely religious family in Georgia. As a boy, Richard was beaten half to death by his father just because he liked to wear makeup and sing in a high-pitched voice. He knew he was different from an early age. He loved men, but in a world where homosexuality was a sin, he chose to be silent, chose to act. While his career was flourishing with hits like Tutti Frutti or Long Tall Sally, Richard did not live like a normal person. He openly declared himself asexual on stage, but denied his homosexuality away from the spotlight. Once on a tour in 1956, a 20-year-old assistant sat with him in a hotel room, their eyes revealing nothing. Richard held his hand, trembling. But only 15 minutes later, he walked out, telling everyone that it was his cousin. That first love, if it was love, ended quietly the next day. Richard changed hotels, changed assistants, and never mentioned it again. Years later, when he was old and his voice was no longer high, he returned to religion, calling homosexuality a sin, then repented for having loved someone of the same sex. The public was confused. A man who had lived boldly wanted to bury the past. A man who had lit a fire extinguished his flame with his own hands. But perhaps such a contradiction is understandable. Being black, being an artist, being gay, in the 1950s, being authentic was a sentence. And Little Richard survived by hiding his identity. He died in 2020, leaving behind an undeniable musical legacy. But perhaps what makes him most endearing is the way he yearned for forgiveness, not from God, but from the parts of himself he once denied. Everyone has a weak side, and sometimes kindness begins with not judging the pain of others. If it is too much of a luxury for an artist to dare to be authentic, then at least we can listen to them with sympathetic ears. 20. Johnny Mathis, the silent lover. In the list of singers who made women fall in love in the 1950s, Johnny Mathis always tops the list. His voice was silky smooth, his face gentle, his eyes sad, as if he was keeping a secret that no one knew. And he was. Born in 1935, Johnny was a shy child in a working-class black family in San Francisco. He loved music, but he knew early on that he was different from his peers. When other boys talked about blondes, Johnny only looked at his tall, skinny classmate with a deep laugh. He became famous very early. The song Chances Are put him on CBS before he was 23. And from there, waves of female fans came pouring in. But amid the bouquets, love letters, and longing eyes of so many women, Johnny felt out of place. Once, on a tour in Chicago, he quietly left his hotel at 2 a.m. to meet a man who worked on the sound team. They sat in the car together for 3 hours, just talking about things no one else heard. Johnny said he had never held the hand of a person he loved in real life. The other person didn't believe it, but it was true. For decades, Johnny kept his sexuality private. It wasn't until 1982 that an interview was published in which he admitted he was gay, but it was quickly withdrawn from circulation due to backlash. It wasn't until 2017, when he was in his 80s, that Johnny finally came out publicly in a tender and emotional conversation. Over 60 years of music, he has no marriage, no scandal, no explanation. He just sings and loves quietly in the dark. For many, Johnny is the epitome of romance. But behind each ballad is the voice of a man who just wants to be loved like everyone else, openly, normally, and without any need to hide it. His story makes us wonder, how many people around us are living with a hidden part of their heart? And how many years does it take for people to dare to call their love by its true name? 19. Jackie Shane. The voice that comes from the place no one dares to name. People call Jackie Shane the embodiment of the limitless soul. On stage, Jackie wears red lips, a high wig, and thick eyeliner like a 60s queen. But what shocked Toronto was not her seductive voice or her androgynous gaze, but the question: who was Jackie Shane? A man, a woman, or something that could not be defined? Born in Nashville in 1940, Jackie grew up in a poor, prejudiced, and intimidating neighborhood. Jackie's mother knew her son was different from the time Jackie was 6. He preferred to wear dresses, play with dolls, and sing Billie Holiday songs instead of baseball. The family was silent. No one spoke out, but his father's gaze was an accusation. Jackie once said that he learned to lie before he learned to read, because being truthful could get you beaten to death. As a teenager, Jackie ran away from home, fled north, and settled in Canada. In Toronto, Jackie began performing in small soul clubs and quickly became a phenomenon. Her powerful voice, her effeminate demeanor, and her frank comments about life made Jackie the first underground icon for the Black LGBT community. But behind that boldness was a first love that left a lifelong scar. In 1963, Jackie fell in love with a sound engineer. They met after a show. It was a quiet, beautiful, and dangerous love. One day, while Jackie was putting on makeup in the back room, the man's mother unexpectedly arrived. She looked Jackie up and down and said only one sentence: "I don't know what my son is in love with." 3 days later, the man cut off contact. No text, no explanation, just silence. Jackie disappeared from the spotlight soon after. For 40 years, she lived in seclusion, not performing, not appearing, as if she were dead. It was not until 2010, when a collection of old music was reissued, that people began to look for Jackie. At that time, she was living alone in a small apartment in Nashville, with no friends, no relatives, and no one else in love. When asked why she disappeared, Jackie just smiled. "I don't want to continue pretending to be someone I'm not." On the day she died, a series of young artists wrote tributes. They did not call her transgender. They did not call her a legend. They called Jackie a person who dared to live, even if only for a short time. Perhaps everyone deserves the opportunity to be themselves, even if only for a few moments. And if the world cannot accept that, then at least we can tell this story as a commitment. Kindness is listening to the pain of others without judgment. 18. Marlena Shaw. The woman who kept a secret until the end of her life. Marlena Shaw always carried an air of mystery. Whether singing the upbeat California soul or the melancholy jazz tunes, people still felt like they were listening to the confession of someone who had lived 2 lives. She was not noisy, did not have scandals, did not declare, but also never denied. And it was that silence that made people constantly ask, who is she? Born in 1942 in New Rochelle, New York, Marlena grew up in a family with a musical tradition, but very conservative. When she was in high school, her mother discovered Marlena writing a handwritten letter to a girl named Lorraine. The lines were very short, but too gentle to call her a friend. She was called down to the kitchen. Her mother held up the letter and simply asked, "Who do you think you are?" No one yelled, No one scolded. But the silence at dinner that night was more painful than any punishment. Marlena didn't answer, and in the years that followed, she never mentioned Lorraine again. Her family was silent. She was silent. That first love, though never acknowledged, was never forgiven. In 1969, when Woman of the Ghetto made her a voice for black women, Marlena began appearing at LGBT shows without ever saying who she was. When asked directly, she simply said, "I love someone who loves me." An eyewitness once recounted that during a recording session in 1974, a female recording engineer left a handwritten note. "Thanks for the hug yesterday." It was the rarest clue fans had to Marlena's love life. No one saw her holding hands. No private photos were taken. But perhaps that is why people respect her more. She doesn't need to show off. She just needs to be present. She died in 2023. Thousands of people have written tributes online. Some say she is a spiritual mother. Some say she is a silent symbol for those who have to love in the dark. And some simply write, "Finally, she can love without fear." Living a good life doesn't necessarily mean showing everything. Sometimes, just not hating yourself is the most courageous act in life. 17. Carl Bean. The pastor born to be different. Carl Bean was once a black kid who was kicked out of the church choir for daring to exaggerate his hymns. He was only 13 years old, but the mocking laughter of the adults of that time stuck with him for the rest of his life. Growing up, Carl always loved music, loved the church, but the church never loved him back. Born in Baltimore in 1944, Carl entered the music industry with the desire to sing gospel, but it was soul and disco that led him to what would make him immortal. "I was born this way." The song was like a declaration that even he did not expect. I was born this way, and I have no regrets. In the 1970s, being openly gay was almost suicidal in the black music scene. Carl did not declare. He let the music do the talking. His family knew he was gay from a young age, but no one said anything. No one asked. And Carl never admitted it because he was afraid of losing the only place he believed was sacred, his faith. He once told an interviewer that his first love was a young man in the choir named Marcus. They would sit after church pretending to read the Bible, but only so they could look at each other longer. One night, after everyone had left, Marcus put his hand on Carl's. No one said anything. But at that moment, the senior pastor came back to the church to get his robe. He saw it. The next day, Marcus was suspended from singing. Carl was not, but for months afterward, he was told to focus more on his masculinity when he performed. Carl got the message. He kept quiet and carried that wound on stage for years. Still, he sang. And when he left the entertainment industry to become a pastor and found Unity Fellowship Church, a place for LGBT people of color, many people cried, because finally there is a place for those souls who were once left out of the church. His death in 2021 was not just the passing of an artist, it was the loss of a man who dared to go against everything, society, religion, family, to live a decent life, just as he was born. Some people don't need to shout who they are. They just need to be present long enough, strong enough, to make others believe that nice and different can go together. 16. Nona Hendryx. The woman who wouldn't bow down. While other girls tried to please the market with short skirts and soft voices, Nona Hendryx stepped onto the stage with bright pink hair, high boots, and a cold gaze like steel. She didn't try to please anyone. She came to wake them up. Born in 1944, Nona was a member of the group LaBelle, famous for the rebellious song Lady Marmalade. But few people know that before becoming a symbol of the feminist and gay movement, Nona was a child afraid of the dark, not because of ghosts, but because of the judgmental eyes of people in her family. Nona once said that she knew she was attracted to women at the age of 10. At that time, she sat next to her best friend in class and realized that the feeling of vibration that people wrote about in
what
books
it is that I want
was
to do
not
rather
for men.
than what it is that
Nona's
everybody else
family did not
wants
say
to
anything,
do.
but every time she looked too
Right.
long at a girl on TV, her mother would change the channel. When she played soccer instead of ballet, her father would just shake his head and leave the room. No one hit her, But no one hugged her when she needed it, and that made her choose to stay silent. Nona's first love was with a stage designer named Teresa. She was 7 years older than Nona. They hid their relationship so well that their friends thought they were cousins. But one day, while on tour, while they were staying in the same hotel room in Detroit, a band member accidentally walked into the wrong room and found them hugging on the sofa. The next morning, Teresa was fired for disrupting group discipline. Nona could do nothing. She continued to tour, singing on stage as if nothing had happened. But in her heart, she knew that the price of loving that woman was a long series of rejections. Still, Nona never bowed her head. She continued her solo career, engaging in social activities supporting the LGBT community. When asked about her sexuality, she simply replied, "I love whoever makes me feel free." Today, Nona is a mentor to many young queer artists. They don't need her to come out because her fearless way of living is a statement in itself. Not everyone can be authentic in a world that forces people to pretend. But like Nona, sometimes just not being silent is an act of courage. 15. Glenn Copeland. The man who had no name. Some people spend half their lives trying to figure out who they are. Glenn Copeland was one of them. Born a black girl in Philadelphia in 1944, he grew up in a society that had no word for who he was. No one taught him about being transgender. No one told him it was possible to be himself. Glenn began his musical career as a folk singer. He attended McGill University in Canada, one of the few places where he felt he could breathe. Despite his roots in R&B and jazz, Glenn chose an abstract path, mixing electronics and meditation. But for the first few years, he performed under the name Beverly. No one knew, and no one was supposed to know, that he was always a man at heart. Glenn's family knew he was different. His mother once found letters Glenn had written to a classmate hidden under his pillow. But she didn't tear them up or say anything. She just put the Bible on the table and said, "You can stop praying, but don't let anyone else know." That sentence was silent. Glenn understood that he could be himself, but only if no one could see. Glenn's first love was a dance student at McGill named Sophie. They fell in love in secret for 2 years, hiding it as if it were a sin. One night, during a late-night rehearsal, the music teacher found Glenn and Sophie hugging backstage. The next day, Sophie was called into the school office and transferred to another class. Glenn wasn't fired, but he was never cast in a leading role again. After years of living as a woman, Glenn decided to come out as a transgender man in the 2000s, when he was in his 50s. He married Elizabeth, a woman who sympathized with him and accompanied him on his journey to find himself. Their marriage was a crystallization of understanding, without explanation. When the public heard the news, they did not just congratulate him. They breathed a sigh of relief. Because after so many years, Glenn finally had a name that matched his soul. Now, at the age of 80, Glenn no longer sings much, but he still shares his life story with young people who are struggling to find their true way of life. No one asked him to inspire. Just by stepping on stage, people felt relieved. Some people have to live half their lives in silence to be able to whisper a sincere sentence. And just one sentence, "I am who I am," is enough to make others' hearts burst with emotion. Each of us only needs such a simple thing, to live a decent life the way we were born. 14. Gay Adenola. The woman who sings with her heart. In a world of soulful blues, there is a woman who never shies away from the truth. Gay Adenola sings not only with her voice, but also with her raw wounds. And she hides nothing, not even the love that turned her away from her family. Born in 1944 in Fredericksburg, Virginia, Gay grew up amid intense racism and sexism. She was the daughter of a music teacher who wanted her to be a traditional woman. But Gay could not be. She spoke out loud, dressed in colorful clothes, and played the guitar like a man. She was kicked out of her high school band for having an unladylike attitude. Her mother knew Gay loved women. One day, she discovered a love letter Gay had written to her bandmate, a girl named Lydia. The letter was written in purple ink, including the final line, "If loving you is wrong, then I don't want to be right." Her mother didn't scream or cry. She just left the letter on her desk with another note. Please save face for this family. The relationship with Lydia lasted less than a year. Once, when Gay came to Lydia's birthday party and kissed her on the cheek in front of her friends, Lydia pulled her hand away and walked away. The next day, Lydia stopped talking to Gay. There was no goodbye, just a void that lasted throughout her youth. Gay later became one of 3 members of the female blues group Sapphire, the uppity blues women famous in the LGBT community and the feminist movement. She came out as gay in 1992, becoming one of the first black artists to dare to do so while her career was still on the rise. The public loved her because she didn't pretend. "I don't just love women, I love freedom," she once said. She now lives with her longtime partner in Virginia. They don't post affectionate photos, don't need wedding rings, just a morning together, sipping coffee and listening to a slow blues is enough. Gay doesn't need the whole world to understand. Just one person who understands is enough. And she wants young people to understand that being authentic, being authentically loved, is not a privilege. It is a human right. If kindness is letting others be themselves, then Gay has spent her life being kind through her music and her truth. 13. Billy Preston. A genius who didn't dare to love. In a world of quiet keys, Billy Preston was the only person who made both the Beatles and Ray Charles stand up and applaud. People called him the 5th member of the legendary band, but behind the aura was a man who lived his whole life in fear of being known for who he was. Born in Houston in 1946, Billy grew up in church, starting to play the guitar at the age of 3. His talent was undeniable, but he was born in a time when being black was hard and being gay was worse than being banished from society. His family was strict. Religion ruled every corner of the house, and when his mother caught him hugging a boyfriend in the garage after a band, one sentence made Billy never dare to be true. God doesn't make sick. Growing up, Billy had a deep connection with a man in a band that toured with him, a young drummer from Philadelphia. They shared hotel rooms, ate together, practiced together, and on occasion exchanged glances that they both knew were more than friendship. But it all came crashing down one night in Atlanta. When the band manager knocked on the door in the middle of the night because he heard unusual noises, Billy got up, shoved the man out of the room, and said in a trembling voice, "I don't know what he's doing here." That was the end of their first love, a betrayal born of fear. Billy remained a closeted homosexual throughout his life. Many in the music industry knew, but no one dared to ask. He numbed himself with drugs, alcohol, and long nights of solitude. When he died in 2006 from liver and kidney complications, people remembered his legendary performances, but they also remembered the sad look in his eyes as he left the stage. Courage is not always about shouting the truth. Courage is about continuing to live, continuing to play, even though every keystroke is a heart-wrenching pain because of not being loved properly. Billy deserves to be loved, not because of his talent, but because he lived a life where no one allowed him to be himself. 12th Sylvester. The disco queen of darkness. There is no one like Sylvester. On stage, he is like a free spirit stepping out of a world where gender no longer exists. He sings higher than any male singer, wears long skirts, paints his nails, and wears earrings. But what makes people remember him is not just his style. It is his courage, the truth that he dared to live when the whole world said he was wrong. Sylvester was born in 1947 in Los Angeles. He was the youngest child in a strict Christian family. His mother punished him by making him kneel for hours just because he wore her scarf around his neck and sang along with Mahalia Jackson. He discovered he was different early on. He fell in love with the boys in his church choir, and he knew that if he told anyone, he would have nowhere to go. Sylvester's first love was with a dancer named James, who worked at a small club in San Francisco. They lived together in a ground-floor apartment where the only lights were purple and a small bed in the middle of the room. It was a beautiful love, but also full of danger. Once, after a show, a group of strangers stopped them in the parking lot, threw rocks, and called them dirty words. Sylvester covered his lover with his own body, blood streaming down his face, but he still sang at the next show. The whole society said he was crazy, but he did not back down. When the AIDS epidemic broke out in the LGBT community, he was one of the first to donate all his show fees to help the sick. He knew he was HIV positive, but he did not hide it. He said during a performance, "If I'm going to die, at least let me die in a velvet dress and applause." Sylvester died in 1988 at the age of 41. When the news spread, some people breathed a sigh of relief, and some cried. But what made people feel the most was that he dared to live, dared to love, dared to endure everything just so he wouldn't have to hide himself for another day. If this world has ever turned its back on you just because you're different, remember Sylvester, and live on with the gentleness he once brought through every note. You have just witnessed half of a tearful journey, famous singers who had to bury their true feelings just to stand on stage. They sang with pain, lived with fear, and there are still 11 more people waiting for you to discover, people who lived, loved, and sacrificed more than anyone knows. Who are they? And why was the truth about them buried for decades? If they were white, would the public be more forgiving? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. 11th, Linda Tillery, the woman who sings with her hidden soul. Linda Tillery never tried to please the public. Since her days as a member of the Loading Zone, she has always carried her unconventional funk and soul music. But few people know that beneath that individualistic artist's shell is a woman who was afraid that her size would be discovered by her relatives. Born in 1948, Linda grew up in a working-class family in the San Francisco Bay Area. Her mother discovered her daughter's strange behavior when she caught Linda frequently cutting out pictures of women from magazines and hiding them in her Bible. No one said anything, but every time Linda entered the room, the atmosphere became heavy. She knew, her family knew, and they chose to remain silent as a silent punishment. Linda's first love was with a modern dancer. They met at a performance and quickly became attached. One night, backstage, they were seen kissing by a member of the organizing committee. The next morning, the woman was transferred to a backroom job. Linda never mentioned it again, but her musical style changed after that event. Stronger, more explosive, as if to shout out the things that were not said. Later, when she came out as gay, Linda did not try to justify it. She simply said, "I loved someone, and I didn't see anything wrong with it." Today, she lives peacefully, unmarried, but regularly teaches music and inspires the younger generation. Peace is not the result of a victory. Sometimes it is the reward for those who dare to live true to their rhythm, even though they have been silenced for too long. 10. Phyllis Hyman, the voice of the cracks that never heal. Phyllis Hyman has always had a mysterious beauty. Her sad eyes, her velvety voice, and the way she stood still before singing made one think she was saying something she had forgotten. She was not only a soul diva, but also a symbol of a soul who could not choose whom to love, because she had to hide everyone. Born in 1949, Phyllis grew up in a large family in Philadelphia. Her father was strict, her mother quiet. When she was a teenager, a cousin happened to see her holding hands with her best friend in her room. No one said anything, but then she was banned from spending the night at friends' houses and sent to a seminary for 2 years. Her first love was a New York lounge singer. They fell in love in secret, but quickly drifted apart when she became famous. One time, an ex-lover called her crying and said he couldn't bear to see Phyllis kissing another man on stage. Phyllis didn't answer. She wrote only one new song that night, never released, but it was an apology she never sent. She was rumored to have had affairs with both men and women her whole life, but never confirmed it. The public called her the classic loner of soul music. When she died in 1995 of a drug overdose, people said she was sad because her career had not turned out as expected. But those who knew her knew. Phyllis's greatest sadness was not being loved the way she truly wanted. No one should have to die for hiding love, and no one should have to live in silence to please others. 9. Arnold McCuller, the voice behind the lights and all the silence. Arnold McCuller is a name that few people know, but almost everyone has heard. He was a backing singer for James Taylor, Phil Collins, and countless other legends. His voice is what keeps the soul of every ballad. But Arnold has also lived a long time in the shadow of others, not just professionally, but also sexually. Born in Cleveland in 1950, Arnold grew up in a conservative Catholic family. His father was the first to tell him that real men don't sing sentimental songs. When his father found him holding a picture of an actor in his wallet, he threw it into the fireplace and said, "I'm not going to live like that in this house." Arnold knew he was gay at 15, but his first love came later. It was a bandmate on his first tour, a funny, warm man who loved him in a way he had never been loved before. One night, backstage, they were caught hugging each other by a lighting technician. The next morning, the other guy was fired. Arnold stayed on, but changed his hotel room and his singing style, colder, more distant. It wasn't until the 90s that Arnold came out life sometimes doesn't need glory. It just needs someone to dare to say, "I am me," and continue to stand firm, even in the darkest corner of the stage, as gay. No big announcement, no big talk. He just brought his partner along for a charity gig. The audience saw it, nodded. No one objected. Only one elderly audience member whispered to his friend, "If only he had done it sooner, I wouldn't have had to live like I was the only one." Arnold didn't need the audience to cheer him on because of his sexuality. He just wanted to sing and live up to that song. Life sometimes doesn't need glory. It just needs someone to dare to say, "I am me," and continue to stand firm even in the darkest corner of the stage. 8. Luther Vandross. The silent symbol of a hidden heart. Luther Vandross is the voice of love songs that generations of black women have loved. But while millions of people think he sings for them, he cannot sing for the person he truly loves. Born in 1951, Luther grew up in a working-class family in New York. After the death of his father, he became the pillar, the gentle one, taking care of his mother and sisters, the model man that everyone thought would marry a virtuous wife. But Luther has never publicly come out. Close friends know he is gay, but they also know he never wants to say it. Once, at a party in Beverly Hills, he was seen with a man, a staff member of the logistics team. When a reporter asked who it was, Luther just smiled and said, "Old friend." But those involved knew clearly that it was a love affair that lasted nearly 10 years, hidden in recordings and torn-up messages. After the stroke in 2003, Luther gradually withdrew. He passed away 2 years later, taking with him a brilliant career and an unanswered question. Why could someone who sang about love so well not openly express his love? The public still calls him a silent symbol, not because he was weak, but because he bravely lived with loneliness without hurting anyone. Perhaps sometimes the greatest kindness is to endure everything so as not to make others feel awkward. But did he deserve to be truly loved the way he loved others? 7. Valerie June. The mysterious muse with a lost heart. Valerie June is the embodiment of dreaminess. Her curly hair and voice that blends folk and blues make anyone who listens feel like they are walking through a field of memories. But what makes her special is not her style, but her way of admitting what no one else dares to say, that at one time she loved a woman, and she has no regrets. Born in Memphis in 1959, Valerie was the child of a conservative family. Her father was a gospel musician, her mother a Bible teacher. Valerie loved literature, music, and a friend named Rochelle. They studied together throughout high school, often singing together in the late afternoon. One day, Valerie wrote a song for Rochelle called Apple Rain and recorded it on a cassette tape. When Rochelle's mother found the tape, everything changed. Valerie was banned from her friend's house. Rochelle was transferred to another school. No explanation. Valerie then turned to the blues, where she could talk about her pain without being blamed. In an interview, when asked which song was the most real, she replied, "The one that no one has ever heard, and that person no longer remembers." Valerie is not married. She lives alone, raises dogs, gardens, and continues to write. The public loves her not only for her music, but for the way she gently recounts her injuries as if they were old, dried flowers that have never been thrown away. Perhaps living a good life is not about being forgiven by others, but learning to forgive your own youthful emotions. 6. Craig Seymour, the journalist who was afraid of his own story. Craig Seymour was once a familiar name in the music criticism world. He has interviewed Mary J. Blige, Janet Jackson, and many other R&B legends. But there is one person he always avoids in every story: himself. Born in 1965, Craig grew up in the American South, where boys were not allowed to cry, let alone love someone of the same sex. He said he knew he was gay from a very young age, but it wasn't until college that he experienced his first love. That person was a promising young singer. They met at an interview and fell in love for 3 months, secretly and passionately. One night, Craig wrote about that person on his blog, using a nickname instead of his real name. But just one sentence of description in the post was enough for his friends to guess. The next day, he received a message ending it. The other person was afraid of losing his career. Craig later stopped avoiding it. He wrote a memoir, All I Could Bear, about his life as a journalist and a stripper to earn money, as a journey to free himself from the prejudice and guilt that society placed on him. The public was shocked, but then loved him for his honesty. Today, Craig is a college professor, living a low-key life and still writing about black culture, sexuality, and personal liberation. If there is one lesson he has left behind, it is this: we should never apologize for falling in love with the wrong person. We just need to have the courage not to continue to lie to ourselves. 5. Tracy Chapman, the singer for Silent Hearts. Tracy Chapman is the voice of silence. No noise, no scandal, no showing off. Just a woman with a guitar singing what the world avoids. Born in 1964 in Ohio, Tracy grew up in a strict religious family. When her mother caught her daughter hiding handwritten letters to a girlfriend in her closet, she didn't get angry. She just gave Tracy a Bible and said, "God is still waiting for you." After that, no one mentioned it again. Tracy's first love, according to people close to her, was a female classmate at Tufts University. They were once seen walking hand in hand in the park one winter night. The next day, the girlfriend disappeared from the dormitory. Tracy didn't say a word. That was also the last time people saw her smiling innocently in front of the camera. Later, the deep relationship with female writer Alice Walker was only indirectly confirmed through the eyes and a few notes in Walker's autobiography. Tracy never married, never confirmed her gender, but the gentleness in each of her songs made the entire LGBT community see her as a symbol of a love that needs no name. Not everyone needs to scream to be heard. Some people only need a sigh to touch the hearts of a generation. 4. Nedra Johnson, keeper of the forgotten notes. Nedra Johnson is not famous in the way of television or charts. She is the voice for those who have been on the sidelines. Independent singer, jazz/soul, openly lesbian, she is everything the industry does not want to promote. Born in 1966, Nedra is the daughter of jazz musician Howard Johnson. Her family knew about her gender very early, but instead of forbidding, they quietly avoided it. When she first brought home a lover at 17, a bass player named Mel, lunch was a quiet affair. Her mother got up to wash the dishes without saying a word. Mel never came back. Once, when she performed at an LGBT event, Nedra was booed by a conservative group. She did not leave the stage. She changed her song to a tender ballad and said before singing, "I don't sing to be accepted. I sing because I can't be silent." She now lives with her longtime partner, is not married, but shares everything, from the stage to her daily life. The public calls her a keeper of forgotten voices. And in fact, the quietest people are often the kindest. 3. Meshell Ndegeocello, the borderless soul of neo-soul. Meshell Ndegeocello is like no other. No gender limits, no music limits, no need for anyone's approval to be herself. Born in 1968 in Germany, raised in Washington, D.C., she is one of the first openly bisexual artists in the black music industry. But acceptance did not come easily. Her family learned the truth in high school. One time, her younger brother accidentally saw Meshell holding a girl's hand while they were listening to music in their room. After that, there was no scolding, only strange looks and a growing distance. Meshell recounted that she learned to love without demanding to be understood. Her first love was strongly opposed by her family. He was a studio collaborator, a female sound engineer, talented but invisible to harsh traditions. They broke up after an argument because they could not live their truth without hurting their loved ones. Today, Meshell lives happily with her wife and children. She has never sought forgiveness. She just wanted to make music out of what she had lost, and that was the simplest courage, living to heal instead of to take revenge. 2. Daryl Stephens, the truth teller in an industry that only lies. Daryl Stephens was born in 1974 and is known for his role in the series Noah's Ark. But few people know that before becoming an actor, he was a promising R&B singer with a warm voice and attractive performance. Daryl's family knew he was gay since high school, but chose to stay silent like many other conservative black families. His first love was with a famous studio singer. Once, during a joint audition, they were discovered kissing backstage. The manager warned that their true sexuality could kill both of their careers. Daryl chose to step back, withdraw from music, and turn to acting, where he could be true and not be forced to lie. Today, he is an active activist for the LGBT community of color and is loved for his sincerity without being noisy. Kindness is sometimes about being real, even when everyone wants you to be quiet. 1. Tona Brown, the voice that entered history without anyone daring to say its name. Tona Brown was born in 1979 and became the first black transgender woman to perform for a U.S. president. But before her honor, Tona lived as a boy named Anthony, quiet, shy, afraid to look in the mirror. Her family didn't understand, her teachers didn't accept, and her church was silent when she cried because she couldn't be herself. Her first love was a classmate at the music school. When that friend found out, he left without saying goodbye. Tona continued to sing, transitioning amid turmoil and stepping onto the stage in a ball gown, her operatic voice laced with R&B. The LGBT community calls her a light in an industry that only wants perfection. Tona never apologized for being different. She just walked with her voice, with pride. Because everyone deserves to live in the body they believe is right. Some pains don't make the headlines, that don't show up in the spotlight because they're hidden by fear and judgment. Black LGBT artists have endured silence for too long. Today, if you're listening to their stories, listen with kindness. Choose understanding over prejudice, because everyone deserves to live authentically. Thank you for walking the journey with these 21 brave souls. If your heart softens, give the video a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment with your honest thoughts. Understanding doesn't come from grandiose words. It comes from seeing others with a kinder eye than yesterday.